I'm not teaching, I'm publicly learning. But hi and welcome to Learning from the Life in the UK test part 190 Christian Churches part 2, that is on the page 67. We already had, by doing this training, if you participate in this training, that is at your own risk. So we already had that the official Church of England is the Church of England. In the United States and Scotland, people are calling it the Episcopal Church, and in other countries it's oftentimes called the Anglican Church. And I don't know how it's pronounced. Anglican. There's no E, so it must be Anglican. Or is it Anglican? Anglican. Anglican. I think I'm going Anglican. But it just does not sound right. It sounds right after the letters if you take it Anglican, but if you think, I don't think that someone would say Anglican. It's much too fast. If you see it just as letters in a book, it's Anglican. Yes, Anglican. But if you imagine someone saying Anglican, that is not an English word. So the monarch of King or Queen is the head of the church, and the spiritual leader of the church is the Archbishop of Canterbury. And the Archbishop of Canterbury is appointed by the monarch, but usually it's done by the Prime Minister and the group of bishops coming together in a task force, something like that. They have written, but usually the choice is made by the Prime Minister and the committee appointed by the church. As a committee, as a task force. It's probably not. Probably the people know the distinction. The separate Church of England bishops sits in the House of Lords. So many bishops of the Church of England, so many people who are important in the Church of England are in the House of Lords. So they're part of the Parliament. It would be actually useful to have a picture. So if you know, I just would like to have a picture of Parliament and a picture of House of Lords and House of Commons. Just if you would know, is it the same room? Are we sitting left and right? House of Lords, House of Commons? Are there two different rooms? How's this working? How can be one Parliament have two? I would, because this is not a philosophical question or a mathematical question. It is not imaginary. It is something happening physically in real life. That there are people in the Parliament, House of Commons and House of Lords. So that is able to make a photograph of it. I just would like to see the photograph of the Parliament. In Scotland, the national church is the Church of Scotland, which is a Presbyterian church. Do we get an explanation what this Presbyterian church is? So in Scotland, there is also they're saying now, the national church. If you're reading that in one through, we can do that happened from time to time. And this text which we go into would say, so we're talking now as it was explained for the thing before. Now it's the same. Now all what happens for the first one basically also is now part of the second one. That is how you normally read a book. That is the use of articles, but you don't have to say the same name again. And they're saying now, in Scotland, the national church is the Church of Scotland. Normally that would mean something like the first thing. In England, there's a constitutional link between church and state. I wouldn't take it in that case completely. A constitutional link is not the same as national church. But we're talking about something similar. But now we had used we had spoken of much smaller proportions identified themselves as Muslims, Hindu, Sikh, and Jewish or Buddhists. There are religious buildings for other religions all over the UK. This includes Islamic mosques, Hindu temples, Jewish synagogues, Sikh gurdwaras, and Buddhist temples. That sentence with "there are religious buildings for other religions" makes no sense if now in the following sentence the religious buildings are listed for the religions listed in the previous sentence. That makes no sense to read that way. There's so much information which could be transmitted, which could be transported over that way. And here are from time to time, but it happened quite a lot of, here it's very obviously, quite often times when you not only are giving much information, but you're not receiving a lot of information, but we now have to assume, are you writing against like that? We have to become more cautious, to pay attention and be cautious and take nothing for granted. Even things written down basically are not for us to take for granted. It's an opportunity to pay great attention. In Scotland, the National Church is the Church of England. So the National Church of Scotland is the Church of Scotland. I don't want to repeat it, I want to understand. There's a bit more. And I want to explain what is the National Church, what is the connection. Can I say it's a constitutional link? I wouldn't go that far. But understanding is something differently than repeating something. Which is a Presbyterian church. So if someone asked me, I could say it's a Presbyterian church. I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. I have no idea what a Presbyterian church is. It is, maybe we get something. It is governed by ministers and elders. Now, does it mean that Presbyterian churches, where they are governed by ministers and elders? Does that mean a Presbyterian church? Is that the definition of a Presbyterian church? That it is not governed by, by who? An archbishop who is by the prime minister, so ministers, and a committee of bishops, so in a way elders. Now, what are elders? It's not really possible to understand the things here. The chairperson of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland is the moderator, who is appointed for 1 year only and often speaks on behalf of the church. Okay, we're going through it again. So the National Church of Scotland is the Church of Scotland. And the Church of Scotland is a Presbyterian church. And the Presbyterian Church, Church of Scotland, it is governed by ministers and elders. And the chairperson of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, so there is a General Assembly. That means, I don't think that's just one, it happens from time to time, but the people coming together, that has been called the General Assembly, and they're having a chairperson. Now what is a chairperson? That is something like the leader? But we know that it is the moderator. And the moderator is appointed for every year, for 1 year, and he speaks on behalf of the church. So the chairperson of the General Assembly is the moderator, and the moderator works as the speaker of the church. And he's appointed by ministers and elders, and that is differently, because it is a Presbyterian church, from the constitutional link to the Church of England, where the Archbishop of Canterbury is the spiritual leader appointed by the monarch, but that is normally done not by the monarch, but by the Prime Minister and bishops. Technically, it's just a lot of names, and we have received to most of them an explanation. You have something for Prime Minister and to monarch, a little bit to Archbishop, but not really. I think we understand what is meant. But we could say it other way around. Are we expecting to understand the Church of England and the Presbyterian Church, their inner workings? That's actually, if we formulate it that way around, it is nothing which could be expected to understand it fast. On the other hand, if you're talking about 5, 6, 7 different names, I don't understand them if you're talking about them. So, the Church of Scotland is governed by ministers and elders, and there is a chairperson of the General Assembly who is the moderator and speaks on behalf of the church and is set into place, who's appointed once a year. Set into place, I don't think that's the proper English term. But when I use it, I mean it's just in the same of appointed, set into place. Set in place. There is no established church in Wales or Northern Ireland. Now what are we going to do? If we want to do, we're going to do what? We're going to do a third part to Christian churches when you have time to go up with again. So nothing new anymore. If you're here for Christian churches part 3, you can just skip to the next part. If not, and you're willing to do it, you can do this training if you're participating in this training. But it's your own risk. We're just warming up a little bit. The hands at the outside, form the fists, and we're bringing them down. And again up. And one last time now. And now the flashlight, same setup. Now we're bringing the fists to the inside and to the outside with the flashlight. And we're having 3 rules. The first rule is that we are stopping immediately as soon as we feel pain. The second rule is that we're going only as far in all these directions as we can go with a little bit of effort. We're not pushing or anything here, just a little bit effort. And the third rule, we're not overdoing it. So this will be already the last time. And now the T-Rex in the morning. Hands out, flat hands, and we bring them down. And again up. Last time. And now the T-Rex in the gym. If you don't have a tennis ball, you can just do it without a fist. Just take the tennis ball, like this, and then press onto it with moderate force. And release again. And press again onto it. And on the third time. Now we're switching and press again onto the 10. And again, we safely stopping as soon as we feel pain. And a third time. And as it moves, I don't know, second or third time. Whatever. No, it was an exercise. And now we're doing, I still don't get the name completely. It's something like the Field Daisies Hörsiv Director or something like that. So we're having our hands like this, and we're having closed fists, and now we're opening, and we're closing again. We're opening and flailing the fingers, and we're closing again. Opening, and closing. And we're doing it one last time. And now the cautious big bang. We're placing the finger tips of one hand on top of the fingernails of the other hand. We're pressing a bit, and now we're opening against that pressure. And we're opening. And closing. And now it's time to change places. We're opening. And now we're doing the unfolding rocket booster. So we're having a good and stable position. We're making long arms, no bend in the elbow. We're making fists. And now we're bringing making strong fists, and we're bringing these fists to the inside, so into flexion. And now we're bringing the hands to the outside, and flaring again the fingers. And again to the inside, strong fist. And to the outside, flat fingers. And the last one, to the inside, strong fists, and to the outside. We're having one similar exercise, the frog testing water temperature. We're going down with the hands, we're flaring the fingers, and we're coming up and we're making again strong fists. And again down and we're flaring the fingers, and again up with strong fists. And the last time, down with flat fingers, up with strong fists. And the final exercise, the sundial. We have your hand outside. You can use a tennis ball or something also. Tennis ball or something. And you just drop it. And catch it again with a long and straight arm. And these were all the exercises with relaxation. We're going with moderate force over the middle part of the lower arm. One this time. And this is the end. I thank you very much, and until next time.